As the New Republic after Endor in the Star Wars Legends continuity continued to grow, taking down warlord after warlord, they eventually managed to defeat the most powerful of the Warlords, Zsinj, in cooperation with the Hapens and even some Imperials, as we covered in the last campaign breakdown. But as soon as Zsinj and his flagship, the Iron Fist, were out of the picture and with no clear successor, there was a significant power vacuum in the region formally making up his territory, much as there had been after the death of Palpatine. The Empire and its ruling council immediately tried to claim much of Zinj's territory as their own, but saying it was theirs and holding on to it are two entirely different things. What emerged was a bloody three-way conflict between the New Republic under Admiral Ackbar on one side, Imperial forces belonging to the ruling council led by their former Imperial ally Teren Rogriss on another, and the forces of Traitan Teradoc's Greater Maldrood warlord faction on the third. The New Republic had hoped to secure a full alliance with the Hapens after the Battle of Dathomir and the death of Zsinj, but while Prince Isolde favored following through with the New Republic in the upcoming campaign, called the Post-Zsinj Campaigns or the Borderlands Campaign, Queen Mother Ta Chum was at best lukewarm on the idea. As a result, none of the Hapen navy ended up committed for the campaign, but several Star Destroyers which had been captured by the Hapens were given to the New Republic, and those were used. Early fighting in this campaign was mostly between the forces of Admiral Ackbar and Rogriss, for whom no official pictures exist. When the Greater Maldrood eventually joined, the New Republic was caught largely in the middle. Losses were heavy for all factions. The New Republic lost most of the Star Destroyers they were given by the Hapens pretty early on in the fighting, along with the Krynid, one of the Star Destroyers which had been part of Han Solo's force hunting Warlord Zsinj. But despite the fact that Rogriss would later claim he had nothing to be ashamed of for his conduct during the campaign, the New Republic inflicted as many as 3 times the losses on the opposing forces overall. The campaign for Rogriss was largely just a string of defeats at the hands of both the New Republic and Greater Maldrood. It wasn't all bad news for Rogriss, however. First, he was able to like and subscribe for more Star Wars videos, which was his greatest victory of all. But then he won some battles too. The Battle of Storinol involved a slugging match between Leia's flagship, the ISD Rebel Dream, and the Peremptory, resulting in the Rebel Dream's surrender and recapture, although Leia wasn't present at the time. If you've read the Thrawn trilogy, you may recognize the Peremptory as one of Thrawn's ISDs, which was used at the Battle for the Katana Fleet. The Greater Maldrood then began their main thrust in the region, moving from their territory straight across Zinj's former holdings, passing through Felucia, Stenos, and Yavin on their way to the Battle of Farai Junction. Since this campaign is largely a collection of different sourcebook entries with no dedicated stories on it, we don't actually have a ton of information on the composition of fleets for many of these battles, including that of Junction, but we do know that this battle in particular went decisively in Teradoc's favor. This victory for Teradoc drew many of Zinj's former supporters into the Greater Maldrood and away from Rogriss and the Empire, turning the theater into largely a 2-space horse race between Ackbar and Teradoc himself. While Teradoc may have had an impressive victory, and may have been annoying Imperials and the New Republic both with hit and fade tactics, using his signature fleet, the Crimson Command fleet of Red Victory-class Star Destroyers, but with Rogriss's local forces knocked out of contention, Ackbar was able to turn his attention more fully to the Warlord. Much earlier, before the campaigns against Zsinj, the New Republic under the command of Admiral Kalbak and Willem Burke had attempted to take the shipyards at the planet Thanos from the Greater Maldrood. While this attack had seemed like a marvelous idea where the New Republic would be able to snap up some of the Greater Maldrood's territory, Thanos, its shipyards, and its neighboring world Togoria had held firm, although they were about to play into Ackbar's endgame. A successful assault on the system by Ackbar marked the Greater Maldrood's first loss of territory to the New Republic. And another force split off from where the New Republic had launched their attack on the Imperials at Selenon to enter the Greater Maldrood at Gala, going in from the opposite end of the Greater Maldrood territory as the fleet attacking Thanos before moving on to Meridoon. From there, Ackbar's forces at Thanos were able to take the Greater Maldrood capital of Centaurus. It seemed as though the Greater Maldrood would soon be going the same direction as Zinj's empire and falling apart entirely. But Traitan was able to call on his younger brother Kosh Teradoc, who was running his own warlord faction in the Deep Core. With Kosh's help, they were able to defend what little remained of the Greater Maldrood after Ackbar's campaign, rebranding as the Federated Teradoc Union, combining the Mid-Rim holdings they had here with the Deep Core holdings that Kosh had before. We don't get many specifics of what was left of their Mid-Rim territory after that point aside from the planet Rivester, but it really wasn't a lot, and they effectively ceased to be a threat. The New Republic had won the campaign, but it wasn't done pressing its advantage just yet. They made further strikes into the remaining Imperial territory, which solidified at the western edge of the Hydean Way and Mandalorian space following Rogriss' retreat. We don't exactly know when these next battles occurred because the map they're from doesn't give a time, but we do know the planets were still held by the New Republic when Thrawn attacked, so they were either before or after the battles we've already heard about. This left a big gap bisecting the remaining Imperial territory bordered by the Pentastar alignment and Aplovis sector. After the various defeats in the Post-Zsinj campaign, Rogriss had retreated from the Borderlands regions, home to the recent fighting, to take command of the defense of Kuat, one of the few remaining strongholds of the Empire in or around the core. These had become even more rare following the defeat of Zsinj, when Anaxis, the planet given the traditional title of Defender of the Core, saw the writing on the wall and surrendered without a fight. Kuat, now under the protection of Rogriss and a Kuat-owned defense force, posed a larger problem. Rather than a traditional assault, though, Wedge Antilles, Tycho Selchu, and the New Republic Minister of Commerce, a Twi'lek named Raurai Mavunk, came up with a much more unorthodox plan. Over several months, they bought a bunch of astromech droids, which were infiltrated into the maintenance pools at Kuat, injecting a virus into the systems of 5 of the defending Star Destroyers. Once they were ready, a signal went out to an A-Wing squadron led by Tycho Selchu, called Surprise Squadron, which jumped into the system and launched experimental ion torpedoes at the unsuspecting defensive fleet, temporarily shutting down one of the 3 defending battlecruisers and 3 other Star Destroyers, while the 5 infected Star Destroyers began their own attacks on supposedly friendly forces. I do have a standalone video on this battle where I go into a lot more depth, but for now I think that gets the idea across. I'll leave a link to that video in the description and in the cards on the video. With the defense fleet in disarray and the New Republic's task force sitting nearby at Horthav, Mavunk called up the Kuat Drive Yard's board of directors and told them that over the last few months he'd been buying up 34% of KDY's stock, putting himself in place as the chief executive and demanding the Shipyard surrender, which it did. Rogriss was allowed to return to the new Imperial capital at Orinda, but hours after Kuat's surrender, Imperial agents throughout the Yard caused some last-minute mayhem. They set off a series of explosions in the docks, jumped 2 of the defending battlecruisers, Event Horizon and Stellar Halo, into the sun, while others still absconded with the half-constructed Eclipse, a massive star dreadnought which was completed in the deep core and used as Palpatine's flagship after his impending return. The liberation of Coruscant a few years prior had been a watershed moment in the New Republic's establishment, but the Post-Zsinj campaigns and the surrenders of these core worlds, Anaxis and Kuat, marked the first time the New Republic was truly in control, and it felt like the inevitable victor of the war, to the point that some within the New Republic, like Mon Mothma, felt further offensive actions would be of limited use. The Empire had been reduced to a quarter of the galaxy, still split between the ruling council and Kane's Pentastar alignment, along with some other smaller groups. Mon Mothma hoped that by directing focus instead to restoring the Senate, and hopefully luring the remaining worlds in with a return to a functional democracy, that they would be able to achieve a much more easy and less bloody victory in the future. There was still plenty of work to be done after all. Many worlds which had recently joined the New Republic hadn't even sent representatives to Coruscant yet. The following year, heading into 9ABY, was a long-needed period of peace and consolidation for the New Republic. But behind the scenes, a new leader was emerging in the Empire who seemed to be able to unite some of the bickering factions and finally provide a real threat to the New Republic. That leader was Grand Admiral Thrawn, whose campaigns we'll be covering in the next video. Thanks for watching, remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and hope to see you next time.